Hello everyone. This is another study under the social approach. Okay, so we are looking at the study done by Perry et al. On personal space. Okay, let's dive into it. All right. So the key concept is interpersonal distance. Now, what do we understand by interpersonal distance? Right, this is distance between two people. Okay, which varies depending on the relationship with the other person. All right. So the distance between two people. All right, or between someone and another object. Okay. All right. So it also varies depending on the cultural norms or personal factors. Okay, now we have another concept which is called personal space. Now every person has a preference, or let me say a personal space, which is an invincible boundary around them. Okay, so personal space is more of invincible. It's not it's a psychological thing. All right, so it's the invincible boundary around them. Okay, if another person enters this personal space, the person may feel uncomfortable or threatened. All right, so I believe we got that right. Yeah, moving on to the four zones of interpersonal distance. You have intimate distance. Okay, this is mostly good for personal, or let me say close friendship, close relationship. All right, you can be very close without feeling uncomfortable, right? um we have a personal distance, okay, for everyday interaction with friends and family. Okay, according to Hall, this is his findings. Now he also found social distance, which is good for formal and professional interaction. It's actually between 4 to 12 feet. All right, you can see the gaps there. Now, and then we have public distance for public speaking and performance, which is from 12 feet upward. Okay, so looking at a key concept in this study, we're going to be talking about empathy. Empathy. Okay, now what is cognitive empathy? All right, the ability to determine another's emotional state, right? So that is quite close to theory of mind. However, when it comes to empathy, you try to help the person, you try to understand the person, you try to um, offer help to the person in one way or the other, right? Okay, so this dimension of empathy involves understanding and processing others' thoughts and feeling intellectually. Okay, and then the other one is the affective empathy. All right, the ability to feel another's emotional state, not just to understand and process it in your head, okay, but the ability to feel the other person's emotional state. All right, this dimension involves experiencing emotional resonance and sharing the feelings of others. All right, moving forward, we have another key concept that will be discussed in this study. All right, that is oxytocin. All right, it's known as the social hormones, right? Some people also call it the love hormone. Now, oxytocin is a hormone and neurotransmitter produced in the hypothalamus and released by the pituitary gland. Okay, wow, pituitary gland. Yeah, pituitary gland. Yeah, it plays a crucial role in social bonding, right? Trust. Now, this hormone helps in social bonding. All right, it's actually secreted when a mother gives birth to a baby, right? It creates that bond between them. All right, it also help in trust and can also lead to distrust. Yeah, that's another aspect. Okay, and emotional attachment between humans. Okay, now it's often called the love hormones, right, or cuddle chemical. Now it's released during positive social interactions. Okay, now it helps regulate social behavior and our emotions as well. So that's the role of the hormone. Now, what is the role of this hormone when it comes to personal space? Yeah, in Perital, oxytocin is a key factor in understanding interpersonal distance preferences. Okay, now the hormone influences how comfortable people feel with others. Can you see? All right, in their personal space, potentially affecting number one, social approach behavior, trust in social interaction, and comfort with physical proximity. All right, so the hormone plays an important role when it comes to how people feel. Okay, when it comes to the personal space. Okay, so well, anyway, we will see the results in detail. We'll see how this hormone influences people's preference when it comes to the distance they want people to maintain with them. Okay. yeah, moving forward. Now, background. Okay, Dr. Anat Perry she's a professor at Hebrew University in Jerusalem. All right, she studies empathy and social processes. All right, also social cognitive neuroscience perspective. Anyway, that's just a quick brief about her. Now, the study aimed to investigate oxytocin's effect on preferred interpersonal distance. That is for the study. All right. She also considered individual differences in empathy traits. Okay, so those are the two things they try to look at: empathy and the effect of oxytocin, and then they try to measure the preference or like the personal space preference. Okay, social salience hypotheses. All right, oxytocin increases attention to social cues. Okay, all right, when it comes to interpretation of social cues, okay, understanding. So oxytocin actually increase the attention of people, how alert you are to the social cues. Now, people interpret situations differently. Okay, this is also another concept. Okay, now responses vary based on the situation. Yeah, that is obvious, right? Now, individual comfort levels differ. Yeah, that is also obvious. Okay, so yeah, research hypothesis. Now, based on previous research on like oxytocin role in social behavior, now we're going to look at an individual differences in empathy. We're going to look at this following hypothesis. Number one, oxytocin administration. All right. Intranasal administration of oxytocin will influence participants' social behavior and spatial preferences. So social behavior, yeah, just their behavior around the thing, and the distance level, okay, between a human and maybe another human, or a human and maybe another object. So oxytocin now will influence people's preference, right? Now another one is affect preferred interpersonal distance. Okay, so participants will show measurable change in their preferred physical distance from one another after receiving oxytocin. So oxytocin will also affect. Now, don't forget, these hypotheses are non-directional hypothesis. Okay, they're only saying it will affect, right? It will affect, it will influence, it will affect, but it's not telling us if it's going to increase or make people prefer closer distances or long or larger distances. Okay, so they are not directional. I hope you can relate with that. All right, so based on empathy level, the effect of oxytocin will vary depending on participants' baseline empathy trait. All right, so the empathy level of the participants, there are some people that are very, very empathetic, and then there are some that are less, right? Low and high. Okay, so there are people that show empathy easily, there are some that find it difficult to show. So oxytocin will work differently on those category of people. Okay, so making the IV to be two: empathy and oxytocin. All right, now another one is the high empathy, which close leading to close distance. Now, participant with higher empathy score will maintain shorter interpersonal distance, right? Okay, so if you have high empathy, you prefer to be very close with people when it comes to personal space. Is that so? We'll also look at the study. All right, low empathy now, which will be to larger distance. Okay, participant with this will lead to larger distance. All right, so moving on, we have the research aim. Okay, effects of oxytocin on preferred personal distances. All right, relationship with empathy level. So this is the breakdown of the aim. Now, the third one, test the social salience hypothesis. And then number four, examine how oxytocin affects social situation processing. Okay, so the amygdala and interpersonal distance. Now, what is the amygdala? All right, the amygdala role, it affects preferred interpersonal distance. Okay, don't forget that amygdala is also um, re- responsible for emotions as well. Okay, it's also responsible for emotions. Okay, now another one is the lesion effect. Amygdala lesion reduce the need for interpersonal distance. Okay, so when it's actually influencing the decision, or let me say when it's an action, all right, it reduces the need for the distance, so which encourages closer distance, right? Now, invasion response. high amygdala activity when personal spaces are invaded. All right. Yeah, when personal spaces are invaded, amygdala is also responsible for fear response. Okay, so when they are invaded, it can trigger amygdala. Now, oxytocin influence, the hormone oxytocin affect the amygdala. All right, so these are the studies by other researchers. So we look at how the study, um, or let me say, how it affects the study in whole. Okay, now looking at the sample and sampling technique. All right, so participants, they used a 56 male undergraduate from the University of Haifa in Israel, okay, aged 19 to 32 years. All right, now compensation, they received cost credit or payment for participation. Now, what is their characteristics? There are five left handed people, all had normal vision and were mentally well, okay, confirmed by a screening interview. So they were mentally well. All right. Now, sampling technique, they were volunteer sampling, self selecting. So the volunteer, that is fairly good. Another thing I we advise students to do is all your studies, ensure you compile a note on the different sampling techniques used for each of the participants. All right. So that will be 12 different sampling techniques. Okay, except for Baron Cohen et al., where they used different categories of samples, okay, and sampling techniques, right? So that might increase the thing to more than 12 a bit. Okay. So generally, this is the participant for the study. All right. Moving forward to the research methods and design. It's a laboratory experiment. We have two controlled laboratory experiments that were conducted to test the research hypothesis under standardized condition. All right, so two experiments were carried out at the same time. All right, so there is experiment 1 and 2. Okay, now repeated measure design. Study used a repeated measures design with randomization to ensure scientific rigor and control for individual differences. Okay, so repeated measure design, and at a particular point, there was independent measures design. Okay, so it's a mixed anyway. It's a mixed. We're going to discuss that later. All right. Yeah, the procedure now. Empathy classification. All right. How were they able to classify the level of empathy of each and every of the participants? There was a questionnaire, which is interpersonal reactivity index. So the questionnaire was given to all the participants to fill so they can classify them under the high empathy and low empathy. So empathy is actually one of the IVs now. 28 items, 47 items as subsection. All right. Um, yeah, high empathy group, um, number 20. Okay, 20 participants fell under the category. Now they had a score of 40 and above in the, so if you get 40 and above in the questionnaire, you become to high, you belong to the category of high empathy group. Now if you score 33 and below, you belong to the category of low empathy group. So they are 20 for this and 20 for this. Please keep that in mind, very important. So this itself is independent measures, right? All right, and then afterwards they will be given oxytocin and then without oxytocin. So repeated measure now becomes the IV after that situation. Okay. Independent variable, participants' level of empathy, either high or low, right? We mentioned that. Now, whether participants received nasal drop with oxytocin or placebo, which is saline solution, right? Okay. So this one now is a repeated measure because each participant, the high empathetic group, received and did not receive. So the low two received and did not receive. So it's a two-way thing. Now, participants took part in both conditions alternatively over 2 weeks. You can see there's a period there to separate the repeated measures. Now, dependent variable, whether oxytocin affected participant preference, or let me say preferred interpersonal distance, depending on their level of empathy. Okay, so it is the preferred interpersonal distance that we are looking at now. Okay, procedure. How did they apply or administer the oxytocin? All right, randomized control or randomized order of oxytocin and placebo administration. So they randomized the things. Some were given placebo, some were given oxytocin. All right. So and then the randomized word there is to show that okay, they used a random way to allocate participants to either of those. So I want to believe that in the high empathetic group 10 and 10, 10 will receive oxytocin, 10 will not receive, and then in the low 10, 10 like that. Okay, so it was also counterbalanced other across week. Okay, so which means that the high will go, the low will go, and then the next week now, so the low will go, the high will go. All right. No, that's not it. All right. So for the high empathetic now, okay, the oxytocin, those that receive oxytocin, which is 10 now, will go. Those that did not that receive placebo 10 will go this week. So next week now, after 2 weeks now, those that receive placebo now will receive oxytocin and like that. Okay. Now, so it was a double blind technique implemented. That is, the experimenter does not know which group has received oxytocin, which group has received the placebo. So 45 minutes wait time for oxytocin level to stabilize. So after receiving the oxytocin or placebo, they had to wait for 45 minutes for the oxytocin to really get immersed into the body system. So hopefully it will be functioning at that time. Yeah. So since they're giving them oxytocin as an injection and not produce naturally, so either we want to see the effect of oxytocin basically. All right, so to see if that will make people prefer a close relationship with people with others or not. All right, so two experiments now. Experiment one, comfortable interpersonal distance paradigm. All right, so the participant had to measure preferred interpersonal distances, test effects of oxytocin and empathy. All right, we already manipulated these two variables already, and then they have to measure the interpersonal preference when it comes to the preference when it comes to interpersonal distances. Experiment two is about choosing room task, choosing the best suitable room for an activity. All right, so to assess social situation preference, examine room choice behavior. So which room do they prefer? Talking about the placement of chairs, placement of tables, and some other things. All right. So if the chairs are too close or it should be separated, things like that. All right. So the experiment one, the research design, laboratory experiment, and the university. Yeah, we mentioned that mixed experimental design with both independent group and repeated measures design. Yes, independent variable, empathy. All right, this is a natural IV there. High empathizer, low empathizer. All right, participant categorized as high and low. Treatment, oxytocin, administer or placebo. Okay, repeated measures design. All participants took part in both levels of this particular one. Okay, I believe we understand that, right? High, half of the high will receive this, half of the high will receive the placebo. All right, half will receive oxytocin, half will receive placebo. All right, so after the in 2 weeks time now they will change, so which means that all the participants will experience oxytocin, all the participants will experience placebo. All right, so condition manipulated for experiment one only this way. Now levels, this is the other IV. All right, there were strangers that will come in, so they will be able to determine are they okay with the interpersonal distance. Authority figure will come in, friend will come in, and then ball. Okay, so 4 different IVs too. All right, repeated measures designed for the IV. So everybody also saw a stranger come in, authority come in, friend come in, and ball come in. So these are the 3 IVs in the experiment one. Now the dependent variable preferred personal space distance. It was operationalized as the preferred distance between participant and the approaching ball, stranger, authority, and lastly friend. Right, so experiment one, comfortable interpersonal distance paradigm. So what is the task? There is a computer animation measuring preferred interpersonal distance. All right, so it's a computer animation. You have to look at it, and the the stranger, authority figure, friend, or ball will be approaching. So you have to press the space bar or a particular stop button to show when you're okay, when you do not want the thing to move closer to you anymore. All right. So, well, anyway, that is a laboratory setting. It might not be the exact way participant might feel in a natural setting, right? Now, procedure: 3 seconds animation show. Okay, figure approach from 8 entrances. All right, it can come from any of those entrances, and then they repeated the experiment over and over. So you can see they had 96 trials in total. So it can come from here now. The next one, it can come from another spot. Okay, different entrances like that. Participant press the space bar to stop the figure. That, oh yeah, it's okay, do not move any closer. All right. So interpersonal distance result when did this in the experiment one. Yeah, look at how close, how far, wide. Okay, wider, and then the widest. So when it comes to friend, okay, participants maintain largest distance with strangers, okay, which is 39.82%. That is the distance level. All right, but then with friend, okay, it is the closest, right, which is 12.46. Now, non-human ball, okay, moderate distance, and the authority is also large. Can you see? So when um um okay, what's the word now? When the thing were coming, when it comes to the IV of these things, the participant preferred friend to be closer compared to others. All right. So main conclusion: people prefer significant closer distance with friends compared to other interaction types. Okay. So keep that in mind. Now, when it comes to the high empathy and low empathy, all right, the result in experiment one, can you see the effect of oxytocin and placebo? Now, high empathy, okay, oxytocin is for this and this, right? The lowest here is the high empathy that received oxytocin, and then the highest is low empathy that also received oxytocin. So oxytocin is producing a double result here. Oxytocin is leading to the lowest level of interpersonal space, that is a very close distance. Oxytocin can also lead to largest or widest distance. Okay, probably I want to believe that oxytocin here is producing fear, right? Fear making people not to want to be close. So oxytocin has a double effect on people depending on their empathy level. All right, if they have high empathy level, then it can make them to prefer closer distance. But if the person has a low empathy level, it can make them to prefer a broader distance, wider distance. Now, placebo, you can see they both fall in between. So this is according to experiment one, the result, right? Now, high empathy participant decreased interpersonal space with oxytocin compared to placebo. All right, low empathy participant, okay, increased interpersonal distance with oxytocin compared to placebo. You can pause this video and check the study and the result over and over again to have a better grasp of it. All right, so experiment two now, choosing room task. All right, task description, you have to choose the preferred room. All right, so the rooms were arranged in different ways, not a real room anyway, it's an animation as well. All right, so L plan layout of a room for a conversation about a personal topic. All right, so you want to plan a layout for the room about the topic. Okay, so which room will you choose? Now, measurement, preference for spatial arrangement of chairs, tables, and plants. Okay. Now, experimental condition: distance between chair. Okay, this is the first one, and then angle of chair position. All right. So they have to choose what is the distance they preferred for the chair. Okay, the distance in terms of centimeter wide apart, and then the angle. Are they going to be facing each other? Okay, or they're going to be slanted 45-degree position or 90-degree, that is not facing each other. So to plan a room layout for a conversation. So the control condition, we have distance between tables and plant, and then angle of position of table and plant. All right, so basically the same thing. Okay, so what is the research design for the experiment 2, IV and DV? Okay, it's also a laboratory experiment. We mentioned that earlier. Now, for the IV one, we also have empathy, right? So I don't need to explain the empathy again. We have the high and low. So the same level of participant were used for this as well. All right. Now, independent variable 2, which is the treatment, oxytocin, and then placebo. All right. Now, looking at the dependent variable here, we have personal space preferences. All right, this is measured through personal distance and angle between chairs. Now for the experimental group, look at what they did. All right, so there were distances between this and this. All right, 20, so there's 20 centimeter interval. All right, so there will be 20 centimeter wide apart. Okay, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120 and 140. So that's why they said it 120 centimeter wide apart. So they had different levels of closeness. And then the angle, all right, 0 degree. Okay, that is um if I'm not mistaken, I believe 0 degrees that the seats are facing. Okay, let's say for example you're looking at a room and then the seats are facing you, both seats are facing you. All right, so they are not facing each other, right? So that is 0 degree. 45 degree, it's slant. So to some extent they are facing each other, to some extent they are not facing each other. And the 90 degree, the seats are actually facing each other, all right, horizontally like this. All right, but if the seat something like this is like 45 degree, right? Look at this chair, it's like 45 degree. Okay, so now control group, instead of having chair and then angles of chair, it was rather table and plant. So this is not comparable really. I don't know why they had to do it this way, but yeah, that is what the study is about. So table and plant, all right, the distance between tables and then their angles. So distance between table and plant and then the angles. I would have preferred to use control group that also used chair distance and then angle. All right, okay. Moving forward, now the result, look at it, oxytocin group, okay, and the control group. All right, so these are the result of the oxytocin, and then this is the result of the control group. So in the oxytocin group, on eye empathy, they also prefer the shortest distance. So which basically means that we can conclude that oxytocin has an effect on the high empathetic or empathizers by making them prefer long closer distance, closer interpersonal space, right? All right, so look at oxytocin on low empathy, it's also increased, although not more than this though, like the previous one, like the previous the experiment one, right? All right, so but then oxytocin on higher empathy people and the low empathy people, you can see that the high empathy are preferred closer distance as compared to the low. All right, the control group, so you can see that okay, high empathetic people, when they used oxytocin, they preferred shorter distance control compared to the control group. And low empathetic people, when they use oxytocin, there is a countered result. All right. Okay, so conclusion, oxytocin affect preferred interpersonal distance depending on empathy level, right? Yeah, high empathy individual prefer closer distance than after oxytocin compared to placebo, right? Low empathy individual preferred greater distance after oxytocin compared to placebo. Okay? Yeah, okay. So strength and weakness, double blind technique is good. It reduces bias because the experimenter and the participant do not know which medication they've taken in this situation. So the result is going to be objective. So quantitative data also were analyzed, all right, because they have to select the particular distance, already structured distance, which is good. So there is no bias with that too. High level of standardization, it's a laboratory setting, so they standardized everything, animations, everything's the same. Use a validated CID, okay, paradigm. All right, so weakness now, potential social desirability bias and self-report. Okay, the self-report aspect, if they have to, well, was there self-report though? Okay. Okay, yeah. The idea that the participants had to choose what they prefer. Okay, so it's a form of self-report, right? So there could be social desirability in one way or the other. All right, just trying to pick a particular one, not necessarily what they will feel, or not necessarily what they feel like in their mind. Now, male-only sample limits generalizability. Okay, and then another one, deception in experiment 2, lack of ecological validity as well. All right, because it is in a laboratory setting. Okay, Yeah, moving on. Application to everyday life. Social deficit. Oxytocin administration may not help individual with social deficits such as autism. Treatment and implication. They found that administering oxytocin to low empathy individual led them to increase their preferred personal distance. Right? Okay. Hence, proving that oxytocin is an unsuitable treatment for males with social disorder. It's okay. Yeah. So anyway, that is it. Okay. Future research, yeah, you can explore this aspect. Okay. Well, thank you very much. That is it. Please, if you've learned one or two things from the video, please you can help me subscribe to my channel and please like the videos. All right. I also have other videos on the channel you can watch as well. I believe they're going to be instrumental to your study as well as your preparation for your exam. So thank you very much and goodbye.